that?
It'll be.
Yeah.
We need to get people.
Yeah,
Do you know what's on the back of the ballot?
All right. I'd like to reconvene back into open session. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the regular Board of Education meeting tonight, February 19th, 2026. We're also streaming on the DPS 109 YouTube channel. Board has convened earlier tonight at 5:15, and we immediately went into closed session. And we are now reconvening it into open session at approximately 7 p.m. So first on the agenda is Stronger Together in 109. Kathy?
All right. We have some Caruso students here to talk about a project they've worked on, and their teacher, Charlie Stepien, will kick us off.
You guys hear me okay? So thank you for having us. Nice to see Caruso well represented, the former administrators, current in the back, current teachers. Thank you. Thanks for having us. So I'm here to talk a little bit about a project that we did. Over the summer, I had the opportunity at Mark Schwartz's guidance to take a workshop I had been wanting to do about project-based learning. And it's something I had been dabbling in over the last several years, to be honest. So I love it, and I wanted to learn more about it. I've been doing bits and pieces. I wanted to learn a lot more about it. So Mark was kind enough to send me to this workshop, online workshop. But project-based learning, what it is, this is where you give students like a real-world problem, something that they can solve, something that's meaningful to them, not just something out of a textbook that they don't know anything about because it's 10 years too old. So this is designed to kind of get the students more involved, and it connects with them. The best thing about project-based learning is I'm not feeding them information. The best way to remember it is to gain the knowledge because you need it. And when you give them a real-world problem or something they connect with, and they need to learn more about it, they're going to remember it, and they're going to connect to it a lot better. So one of our units is water, and historically we've done it very traditionally. We teach a little bit, we give them some activities, and then say go build a water filter. And the kids love building the water filter, and it's really cool, but they don't really connect with it at all. So they're not going to go home and say, hey, I'm going to build a new water filter for home, Mom. So it was fine, but it wasn't great. So what this project is called the Watershed Moment. And the kids were asked to create a public campaign to raise awareness for our local watershed. So it was something that directly impacted them. And we talked about researching. I said, you guys got to come up with your own research questions. I gave them very little guidance that they didn't like too much. But I said, what's the first question you guys need to know? And somebody says, well, what's a watershed? I said, yeah, that's the biggest one. What is a watershed? And then we went into what is our local watershed? Where does it go? So we went in all kinds of different things. So it was the first time in a long time where I spent like 4 days on researching, and out of 75 students didn't get one complaint. So it shocked me, but it was great because they were really into it. I went around, my wife loved this. We drove all around the area collecting water samples from local lakes. She was the one getting on the ground trying to reach for the water because I was afraid of falling in. And so she would do it. So we went all over the place and got a ton, and the kids got to test local water samples. We gave them the hands-on activities that we typically do, but I gave them restraints like you don't have to do some of these. You choose the ones that are meaningful for you, and they got to still do some hands-on activities and then put a public campaign together. The only thing I wish we would have done is they'd asked about, but logistically it didn't work out. Like, can we really go present this to Deerfield? I'm like, well, that would be great. That would be really cool, but I think there's a lot more to that. So, but I'm going to let you hear from them. They put a little presentation together. So, which one do you want to do? You got Sam, you first. Okay. Here you go.
So we started our project with a bunch of research, which few kids didn't like, but we got to learn a lot about our watersheds, and we really got to understand it. About halfway through the research, we went on a field trip to a water testing place, to the place that collects all the water from our local watershed, and we learned all about how plants help clean the watershed, and this really helped our research. Then we did a fun part, and we started testing the water samples that they got. This was really fun because we got to use hands-on experiences, and we got to test different things like dissolved oxygen, see how clear the water is, and test like the acidity of the water, and we got to understand what the watershed is like in our area. So you can see us on one of the roofs of the place that collects all of the water from our watershed, someone testing the water from our watershed, and us doing different experiments with it. So it was really fun, and we got to learn a lot about it while using our hands.
Okay, so next we collected data by doing different activities. So some of them were digital, but a lot of them were hands-on, set up in the science room. We got to learn a lot about different topics like water pollution, water quality, the water cycle, and just watersheds in general. It really helped us learn a lot more about watersheds and really understand how they're used in real life. And then we moved on to the project, which was the main point of this entire thing. We basically had two parts, the public campaign and the informational document. So the public campaign was where students worked together to make either some sort of poster or flyer. A lot of them were actually hung around the school that included some brief information about watersheds and a link or QR code that they could then go to the informational document. On the informational document, we kind of compiled all of our research about all the different topics about watersheds, water cycle, everything. And either it could be a document, it could be a video, it could be a speech, we could really make whatever we wanted. And it really helped us show our information and learning that we learned about watersheds.
Okay, so first what we did for us, we have the results. So some interesting facts about watersheds that we learned during the process, which Miles explained and Sam, is the water that comes out of your tap for drinking and cooking and brushing your teeth originates from a surface or groundwater source within a watershed, which is why it's very important to keep these clean. And then the food you eat, including produce and meat, depends on water from watersheds for crop irrigation and livestock. And some human impacts on watersheds include pollution from agriculture, such as like pesticides and nutrients and sediment into water bodies and watersheds. So you can't like over fertilize your lawn because it'll affect everyone. And Illinois' watersheds are significantly dirty because 40% of stream miles are unsuitable for habitat life and recreation, and 85% too polluted for swimming or recreation again.
And then on the left side of the screen, we have a poster that I actually made. We have a few fun facts, like the fact that throwing trash on the ground can cause water pollution because of runoff, and it can get both humans and animals sick. And then there are also ways that you can help. And then we also have a QR code which you can scan to get to our informational document, where we have a bunch of questions and a bunch of answers to those questions so you can learn more.
Thank you for listening.
So the results, it was a really positive experience for the kids. They got a lot of working together. It was more engaging than traditional. When I asked the kids, and we know kids can be brutally honest, I didn't really get too much negative feedback, very helpful feedback, but overall they said they really enjoyed the process, so I think it was a very successful activity. Just some pictures of the kids, but in various activities. But thank you very much.
I got a question. So, do you
Yeah,
have
no, go
questions?
ahead. I was
Okay.
going to say,
Yeah.
ask questions, and
Yeah.
then we have some certificates.
So how much cross collaboration between like the teams, like in terms of subjects, like on this were having? Was it very specific?
This one was just
Yeah.
science,
Okay.
but I talked with social studies does some water,
Mhm.
so we're trying to figure out, actually for one of the chaperones for the field trip was one of our social studies teachers,
Mhm.
because he says this would be a great way for me to connect it, so he went, so
Right.
we're talking, it's kind of an experimental unit this year, see how it went, so we're talking next year, and it'd be plan ahead? Is there more that we can do with it?
Yeah, because I can see kind of like the connection points here, not only social science, like you could actually, like you were talking about with the village board as a presentation, or how do you engage with like the village government, right?
Right.
Kind of deal. And then there's the ELA aspect of it. How do you get a point across? How do you write an informational document? How do you, there's so many different disciplinary aspects to
And once you
this.
start, there's
Yeah,
so
it's just
many
like everywhere that you can go. Yeah, right,
where you
exactly,
can
yeah.
go, what you can do, and again, I think being the first time, it was, well, let's see how this goes. And,
Yeah.
it was also our second unit of the year, our first big unit. So things came up really quick. When I called the Stormwater Management Libertyville to get them, and I'm like, we'd love to come for a field trip. What do you guys do? And I gave her some dates. I'm like, I really want this to kick off the project. She's like, hey, we can't do this for another month. Well, we can come in. I'm like, well, we'll adjust it to get in there. So knowing now what I know is I can plan ahead and give them a call this year to try and kind of get that on the books sooner.
Okay.
I'm going to steal a page out of Mrs. Jackamu's book and ask 3 questions.
It's actually going to be 4. It'll be really
Okay. So first one to the kids, act like we don't know anything and tell us what did you learn? Like what is a watershed and why does it matter to you and your family?
Go for it.
A watershed is a place where all the water that like rains and snow, everything gets collected into that source, and then scientists and other people will use that to do research and figure out how we can improve it. And what was the other question?
Tell us what you learned.
I learned that watersheds impact us a lot because the water that comes out of every tap in your household is from a watershed. And if you've ever eaten a fish, which I'm sure you guys have, the fish swim in that water, and if your watershed is polluted, such as ours, you could get food poisoning and sick, and this can cause a lot of diseases, which are really bad for you because of the impact of the watersheds on the fish.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you. The second one is for one of the parents that I know. Every parent's best day is when the kids come home and won't stop talking about something that happened, right? So did any of the parents have that experience with their kids, and would they like to share?
We were just
It-
here to
the-
videotape.
Yeah?
Okay, so yeah, this was something that we talked about on and on and on. But yeah, every evening we kind of when we have dinner we do a go around the table kind of activity, and so every day the watershed activity was on the agenda to be talked about. It was fun to see the real life experience. So I'm from India. I was educated in India, and so I anyway think the school system here does a lot more hands-on, and kids actually get to learn a lot more than memorize a lot more. And so this one was just like a more novel idea from like what I've seen in the past classes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you. That sounds like a wonderful tradition in your household, too, at dinner time. The final one is for Mr. Stempian. I love coming to your class, and I was in on the ground floor of this when you were just getting started. So the final question for you, there's any number of different risks that you take in the course of trying something you've never tried before, right? So what did you learn in the course of the process?
I learned just not to be afraid to fail. You try this, and I'm very honest with the kids when we do something new, and I'll tell them, look, we've never done this before, and this might be the greatest activity, or this might be awful, but I said, let's give it an honest shot, and let's try, and depending how it goes, I love getting the kids' feedback, because I said, how can this benefit next year? How can I improve on this, and get their feedback, and I was asking, like, do you think I should do this next year? Would you recommend it? And for this, it was overwhelming yes. But yeah, I just think you can't be afraid to try something new and fail. And it might not work, and if it doesn't, you chalk it up to a learning experience, or how you can improve on it. And if it works, you got something really great on your hands.
Sounds like our district mission and vision, doesn't it? Yeah, great. Yeah,
No, I'm not
great.
looking at that.
Yeah. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
And as we always do, we like to get a picture of the students and thank them. And we have Miles. You're gonna get a collection. All right, if you could come up and let us get a picture of you with the board.
All right, so next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. If you all want to stick around and listen, feel free. Otherwise, thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate
so
it.
much. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Good job.
Oh, Stephanie Brand. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, superintendent's report. Mike?
All right, now that Ryan has yet again cleared the room for me. So,
One of these days he's going to say you have to.
I tell you, you got to stick around for this. This is the best part of the meeting. All right, there are two things. One of them was welcoming a bunch of incoming kindergartners. We had kindergarten registration, right? And somebody in the room had one of the kids that we got to meet in this as well. So it was really, it's a high energy, tons and tons of excitement, getting pictures taken. I'm sure you heard about it at home, right? And do you have a firecracker at home? Let me tell you, boy, a lively, smart kid. Yeah. Got to meet lots of kids and lots of parents. It's always one of the best days of the year. Importantly, the district makes hiring and staffing decisions based on enrollment. So if anybody knows somebody who has not yet registered their kindergarten, we really need to know that. HR and the principals need to align our staffing relative to the number of kids we have. So there's a practical part of this as well. And the second thing is our Learning Together. We're going to have a family education program on Monday. Dev Heitner will be joining us. She spoke either last year or 2 years ago at Highland Park High, and she's a well-regarded person in the region, speaks regularly, and will also be kicking off our Gift of Failure community book study in the coming weeks and months. So this is the next opportunity for us to share with our families. One of the things I ran into somebody while traveling, one of our parents, long way from here, and he said, we are reading and paying attention to everything the district is doing. We've got the whole our kids are making their lunches, they're walking themselves to school, they're doing all kinds of stuff. So it's really gratifying to hear how parents are paying attention and how much they're benefiting from these community book talks. So that completes the superintendent's report. Please join us. And that the time and place of Dev Heitner's presentation is Caruso at 6:30 on Monday.
And I think for those who like to read like me, the book event is April something. It came out in the newsletter.
It's different at every school.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
so
it's
we'll have
school-based.
school conversations, and then we will schedule a community conversation in May.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And it wasn't on the superintendent's report, but since Lauren's here, did we have Pack the Place at Shepherd?
Mm-hmm.
And how did the students fare this year?
They made the ending basket that was worth 6 points, so they won.
Yeah, they did.
always well attended, always impressive. Kudos to you guys. Thank you.
One more question for Mike about the book club. The success last year with Anxious Generation was great, and we had a lot of books available for the public. Are we thinking of doing something similar for this one?
Yeah, we'll definitely do something like that. One of the things that was really gratifying, the library participated. We also had books available here for pickup, and we'll advertise the daylights out of it like we do all over the place. And if somebody wants to come get them, check out books and buildings and so on and so on.
I have a question. Do we mainly do these at Caruso?
The auditorium really lends
Right.
itself,
Okay, good.
yeah.
That's what I thought. And so I went to one, I think it was at the Doug Bolton. is it?
Mhm.
And to this day, it's still in my head, right? And I just, I keep reminding, like ourselves as a family, the importance of like breaks, just like certain things resonated with me. But it was really nice to just talk to parents.
Right.
And you're like, you have to share, similar issues, and just, it was such a great event. So I recommend to any parent, if you can carve out the time, attend them. They're really, really good.
I think there are times when we wonder if we're getting through to our parents, and the parent I ran into was talking about the Let Grow project and just how much of an impact it was having on their family. And, the kids are proud of what they're doing, and they're coming up with different things each year. And I hear that regularly from our parents. They are paying attention. We got an email not too long ago letting us know that, hey, some of the stuff that you guys are talking about doesn't align with some of your district practices. It's like, thank you for that. We hear that relative to charging the computers at home. It's like, look, we don't want these things at home, and that's one of the points from our presentation as well, is we don't have the capacity to charge those. But all these things are evidence that people are paying attention.
All right. Next on the agenda is the first opportunity for community participation. District 109 has 2 opportunities for public comment, whereas many organizations offer 1. Our policy stems from the community's longstanding commitment for public discourse and representation. We take all public comment very seriously, and while public comment isn't a back and forth, but instead an opportunity for the board to listen, please know that we listen carefully. Our first period of community participation is solely for items related to the meeting's agenda, and the second period of community participation near the end of the meeting is open for all matters. If you wish to comment, please fill out a community participation form located on the podium and hand it to Rebecca Rudd, who's sitting to my left at the end of the table. We'll call you up one at a time to the podium to speak. Please limit the length of all comments to no more than 3 minutes. If you want to speak now and haven't filled out a form, you can come on up and then fill out the form afterwards. So is there anybody that wants to speak?
I have one form here, so we'll call Rebecca Fraze, Ben Lombardi, and Robin Tortorella.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Robin will join us. I don't know where she went. Okay. Members of the Board of Education and members of the Deerfield community, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Rebecca Fraze, President of the Deerfield Education Association, and with me is Ben Lombardi, Vice President of the DEA, and Robin Tortorella, DESA President. We are here tonight to express our strong support and the support of our membership for the District 109 referendum. At its core, this referendum is about creating learning environments that allow every student to fully access their education. The physical conditions of a school building are not separate from learning, they are a part of it. As educators, we see every day how classroom spaces, infrastructure, and access to services directly impact student engagement, focus, and achievement. When spaces are designed to support instruction and student needs, students are better able to collaborate, concentrate, and participate meaningfully in learning. Across our district, educators have shared consistent experiences that highlight why these improvements matter. In several buildings, special services staff must share offices and meeting spaces, which can make it more challenging to provide individualized support and to schedule services without disrupting instructional time. Updated and thoughtfully designed spaces would allow us to deliver these supports more effectively and with greater consistency for students who rely on them most. Educators have also experienced how building conditions directly affect instruction. I can speak to this firsthand. Unreliable heating and cooling systems in classrooms across the district
have required the use of large portable units that are too loud to operate during lessons. This creates situations where staff must balance maintaining a comfortable learning environment while also maintaining clear instruction and student focus. These challenges reduce instructional efficiency and take time and attention away from student learning.
Equally important, this referendum represents an investment in equity. Every student in District 109 deserves access to high-quality learning environments regardless of which building they attend or what services they need. When facilities limit how instruction is delivered or how students are or supports are provided, students do not receive the full educational experience they deserve. Improving our buildings ensures that all students have consistent access to the resources, supports, and environments that help them succeed. We recognize that financial decisions of this magnitude are significant for our community, and we deeply respect the responsibility that comes with them. At the same time, strong schools are a cornerstone of a strong community. As educators, we're proud to serve Deerfield students each day and are committed to providing them with the best possible education. This referendum would not change that commitment. It would strengthen our ability to meet the expectations of our students, families, and community. Grounded in the collective experiences of District 109 educators and centered on what is best for students, we stand in support of the referendum, and we hope the Deerfield community will join us in supporting this investment in safe, functional, and future-ready learning environments for all students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to say anything? Okay. All right, next on the agenda is informational items. 8.1, read, define 109. Kathy, John?
We have had many information sessions over the past few weeks, and we have 5 more remaining. Saturday at Wilmot at 1 o'clock is our next one. They've been lightly attended. Today we had a virtual session that I believe had 6 attendees, but we stay and answer all the questions, and those who are there to learn and ask questions and are engaged in the future of our community. We do want to share with the community. We're getting the word out. Voter information, vote by mail is underway. Early voting is available at the county courthouse up in Waukegan, and countywide early voting starts March 2nd. The Deerfield location for early voting is Deer Spring Pool, but you can vote anywhere in the county, any of the early voting sites. And election day is March 17th. So we'll send people to the Lake County Clerk's website for full and complete information on how to register and how and when and where they can vote.
And just as a piggyback, I may be the only person that wasn't smart enough to figure this out, but the referendum is on the back of the ballot. And so I was filling out my mail-in ballot and filled everything out, and then there's a big empty section, so I thought the ballot was over, and I was like confused, and I went to go fold it up and mail it, and as I'm folding it up, I noticed text on the back. Now, I should have read the fine print that said, please turn over more on the back, but because there's such a large empty section after the initial front page voting, your brain doesn't tell you there's more. So FYI for anyone with their ballot, it is on the back.
Flip your ballot over.
Flip your ballot over.
For those of you that are unaffiliated like myself, you end up with just one question, so it does become easier
Okay,
to say.
thank you for the clarification. For other people, it's on the back.
And I do believe those who vote in person, the poll workers do tell you to flip it over, but it's good.
I will say this is my first year voting by mail in an election here, and it is unbelievably smooth.
It's easy.
Came in mail. I registered. I think I got it 2 days later. I sent it in. I just got the text. I think I mailed it 2 days ago. I got the text that they received it, counted it. So you have full visibility. It's amazing. So. See there. That's it.
Sign carefully.
Don't have 2 signatures. I just want to say, really nice job on being there for even if they're lightly attended, being there ready to answer questions and making yourselves available during the middle of the day, late in the evening, and having a 2 or 3 hour discussion with 1 or 2 people. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, and we have said, we'll go anywhere. If you have a book club, pickleball courts, we'll meet you there. Wherever you want to learn about this, we want to get the word out. Our goal is to have informed voters.
And to piggyback on that, anyone that has sat through the presentation, everyone walks away, even those of us have sat through it multiple times, walks away feeling like it was rigorous, robust, informative. Like if they walked in with questions, they didn't leave with questions. So regardless of attendance, whatever, everyone that's had a chance to listen to it has learned a tremendous amount.
And as a reminder, there are video recordings on our website, so if you want to watch it on demand, then that's the place to go.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, next on the agenda, winter data review presentation. Danielle.
All right. I always tell everyone that I have a very efficient report prepared, and we'll see how it goes because they all look at me and scoff when I say that. So I have the winter assessment update that will just really focus on NWEA MAP math and MAP reading, as well as the accurate growth that accompanies those scores. Quickly, before I enter into the specifics of the data, I just want to remind everyone that we are using the updated NWA MAP assessment, which has a new item selection algorithm. And in addition to that, NWA updated its norms in July of 2025. So that is also a shift. NWA says when there's new norms and new testing to be really cautious about making any changes based on data in the initial year, to not do any over-analysis or interpretation of them. What we know is that the RIT scale, which is what we report, has not changed. That is a stable score, so we can look at that as a comparative. But if families were looking at their MAP report, they might have seen some shifts in the national percentile based on the new norming scale. And so what they were seeing was larger shifts at the lower achievement levels. That's where you saw the most variation, but smaller to no shifts really at the higher achievement levels.
Which direction? I mean, I noticed that. Did the norms for national go down pretty significantly?
Particularly at the middle range and the lower achievement range, it's really just that top quartile where you saw minimal movement, but everyone else saw some shifts.
Okay.
So you might have seen some increase in percentile, but what also is a notable change in the data is that there is, because of the new testing algorithm, there is more anticipation of growth throughout the year. It used to be you would see small increments of RIT growth, but because of the algorithm being focused more on grade level specific standards first and then moving in and out of the grade level, they are anticipating that kids should show more growth within the year because instruction matters more on this test.
Okay.
So what we're looking at here is similar to what we've shown all along, our MAP Math district overview. As a reminder, RIT bands have a 10-point spread, and early numbers in that band means skills are emerging for students, and the later numbers within the same band signify that the skill is more developed. So what you're seeing here when you look at our winter mean and you look at the comparison of the winters in the 2 previous years is very little change, right? Like most of our grade levels are within a single RIT point of the previous year's performance at that same grade level. So a lot of really great stability when compared to previous years. We do see some bumps in certain grade levels. 4th, 5th, and 8th are actually seeing higher performance than cohorts that preceded them, which is good because we are in the new implementation year of a math curriculum, which oftentimes school districts would anticipate an implementation dip in the data because you have students and teachers adjusting to new materials, instructional routines. And as a reminder to the board, remember we adopted a math program that looks very different instructionally than previous years because we're asking kids to engage in sort of that conceptual productive struggle before engaging them in like the learning that is specific to the algorithm and the way of learning mathematics. So it is definitely a shift, but we're seeing that our kids are still learning and growing, and we certainly aren't seeing the impact of a dip that you might see in an initial year. This chart we give you just so that you can look at cohort data. Honestly, anytime we test, growth for the individual child and growth for cohorts is the most important thing. We tell people to look at both proficiency and growth because you can't look at one in isolation of the other. But this really illustrates the growth. If you look across, you can see how cohorts are growing in RIT bands year over year. And we've still got like the current 10th graders on this so that you can also look up and down in the chart if you wanted to compare different cohorts. Essentially, what you're seeing in this, again, is fairly consistent performance over time. We have an 8-year span of cohorts, and if you look at certain grade levels, you see that usually our grade levels are within a couple of points of one another in the scaled score, and that scaled score, again, doesn't change. So pretty consistent performance overall in math. And then finally, on this page, we also just, ensure we highlight that our kids are outperforming the nation. We sometimes put a lot of pressure on ourselves and ask a lot of questions about the growth and the proficiency rates, but this just illustrates like our typical third grader in the winter is comparable to a fourth grader in the winter. The sixth grader is comparable in the circle that we've put there to an 8th grader in the spring. And what I would note, and I don't even have highlighted on this spreadsheet or on this slide, is that our 8th grade is off the charts. I mean, MAP is less used in the high school, but our 8th graders, are no longer showing measurable data on the achievement norms.
Can I just stop you for one quick second to understand this a little bit?
Yeah.
So we circled the 6th grade is equal to the 8th grade in the spring. Am I looking at the numbers right? That's the 6th grade is also equal to the 10th grade in the winter?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that the norming sample in the high schools is fewer, but yes, you do start to see less growth because of the assessment and because the norming sample slows in the high school. Yep, it shrinks. And then the final slide for math is the ECRA report, and I just want to remind everyone as we look at this that we're actually looking at two very different measures on the ECRA report. I always point out the percent who meet benchmark column, and that is very, very different than the percent who are at high growth, expected growth, and low growth. There's not overlap or direct correlations between the two. When you're looking at the percent who meet benchmark, that is the comparable for that is if students were to take the IAR today, that is based on this performance on the winter MAP assessment, that's the percentage of students who would be anticipated to meet or exceed on the IAR, which is a spring benchmarked assessment. Here is an important thing to note though, and we just renormed the IAR in the state of Illinois, is that there's variability in expectations for benchmarking as well. That's really, really important. So just as an example to give you all, the fifth grade IAR score compared to a national norm would require a student to be at the 60th percentile to meet or exceed in fifth grade. In 8th grade, a student would have to be at the 69th percentile to meet or exceed. So they actually have to grow greater than the expected rate to meet or exceed the same kids between 5th grade and 8th grade. Ironically, when they go to 11th grade and they take the state assessment there, which currently is the ACT, the national percentile to meet or exceed in 11th grade drops back to 63rd percentile. So honestly, when you're seeing like the yellow growth dot there, and we're also looking at the benchmark pieces, like 8th grade has the highest expectation of benchmarking across all grades in mathematics on our state assessment. Another thing I might say about yellow growth for 8th grade, and we've talked about this in this room and at this table for many years, 8th grade winter assessment is always difficult for kids because they've started talking to the high school already about their schedule, they're prepping for freshman orientation, they're doing all of the things, so their minds, they've already started that transition, and we're telling them, one more test, this really matters. And so we always wonder if that's a true assessment of what they're capable of or not. The one thing I do want to highlight on this slide, though, is we're seeing really amazing growth at fourth grade. I can make a lot of hypotheses about the reasoning for that. We did have several pilot teachers last year that were fourth grade teachers, so they had some additional knowledge and comfort moving into the instructional model that we're using this year and certain aspects of the curriculum. Our math curriculum specialist has also been co-teaching and supporting fourth grade teachers in particular because we wanted to see some elevated growth at that grade level. We clearly are, so she has now moved on to fifth grade and is doing some additional support there. But those are two potential hypotheses for that.
I know one of the concerns that we've had historically is that fifth to sixth grade transition, right? And you can see it here a bit in that Met benchmark, right? Is that impact that 58% there in Met benchmark sixth grade?
Yeah, that is one of the things that we're paying attention to. Another part of variability, right? Like kids are transitioning sixth grade and they're seeing multiple teachers. They're going through a lot of changes. Another thing is that the assessment in sixth grade for MAP is a little different than the 2-5 test. So we often see like a little bit of a difference in scores in the fall and winter of sixth grade because there are additional instructional areas that start showing up on NWA because they now move to the 6+ test, which takes them all the way to high school content. But again, that benchmark is a variable that we're going to be paying attention to because last year, that same cohort, had 71% of students meeting or exceeding. So right now, the fact that 58% on this benchmarking test would be meeting or exceeding if they took the test today means that we still have work to do, but this is a temperature check. Winter is meant to be a temperature check because I think we will be at that or above that by the time we get to April.
I think that one thing that might help us out in these presentations as we go forward, right, is like these identifications that you're making, right, in this course, for instance, the fourth grade over performance, right, is like having something in the next, like, hey, we called this out last time, this is what we're seeing now kind of deal. It just helps from a trending standpoint. I mean, I know I'm not saying that we need to have a whole list, but like if there's like a few things that you're like, hey, these are the watch outs that I want to look for the next one. Yeah. It would be good for us to, because we only see this infrequently.
3 times a year.
Right.
I'm happy
So-
you brought up the fifth, sixth grade. I'm sorry. I was looking at that same transition. I was going through all of these different ones from fifth to sixth grade, and it seems like they're all smaller growth versus every other year from year to year. So there's something about that.
I think you also saw that on like that RIT scale on the slide before where you see like 10-point RIT score jumps between grade, except between fifth and sixth grade, both for reading and math, they're like a much smaller delta versus the other grades.
It's always been a point, and it's that transition,
Yeah.
right? There's so much that happens during that time period. Change of test, change of environment, change of schedule, right?
Change of test. Yeah, there are a lot of variables.
But it's definitely something that we've always like kind of zeroed in on and said, okay, what can we do better here in terms of that transition?
But doesn't every fifth grader to sixth grader, so the benchmark should adjust, or am I thinking of it wrong? Because you're comparing to everybody who's going from fifth to sixth nationally, so they all are going to have that same
Right.
struggle.
But not every school district is organized in the same way, if that makes sense, right? So they're some districts are sixth or seventh and eighth only, right?
Well,
They stay
and
the same-
remember,
yeah.
so ECRA,
They're still changing the test.
the benchmark data is based on our Illinois state assessment. The growth data, because we're working with ECRA, like those growth parameters are based on, they're locally normed. So they're based on our expected growth. So every single child in the spring, ECRA looks at their data and their growth over the year and then resets the growth target for every single student. And then looks at every single student as a compilation to set the growth target for the child or for the cohort at the grade, for the school, for the district, et cetera. And that is reestablished every spring. So for example, if I tested last year and I had 10 points of RIT growth, my expected growth for this year becomes 10 points of RIT growth. And that might be extraordinarily high, but now my target is based on my typical performance. A child who has had less RIT growth would have a lower target. A cohort that's had lots of RIT growth, again, would have a higher expected growth rate than a cohort that has had lesser growth. So it is variable too.
Is it fair to say so I understand this, and actually, would be new for me, is the MET benchmark is district-wide, right? Because then when you go to the right and you start looking at the growth, the high growth, low growth, expected growth, right? That's individual by student. It's specific to the student, right?
Yes.
So that's why, like, because if you look at across the board, like, it's green growth for that cohort, even though that's a 58% number. If you look at the distribution of high, low, and expected growth, it's actually in line, right?
Right, they are growing as expected, even though they're at a lesser proficiency.
Yeah, the whole cohort as a whole is at a lower.
Yes, and that's why it's important to look at both of them side by side, because they're growing as is typical for that cohort, even though if you compared them to a cohort who's at 85% benchmark, right, that's also growing at typical growth. They're growing as they typically have, and if we keep them growing in the green, then we should be at the expected benchmark by the time we get to state testing that was projected for that particular cohort.
So to understand that, so then that percent of low growth, which is, it's at, 28, like if we look at second grade, 28% of kids grew at a lower rate than expected based on their own individual RIT score from the previous year.
Yes, based on their performance in first grade.
So then, because like I had a question of kind of understanding this, where like if we're seeing a high percentage benchmark on a grade like second grade, so overall the cohort is already performing at end of year target in the middle of the year, right?
Right.
But then you have 28% that are growing lower than expected. So for me, does that mean that
Their first grade.
well, does that mean that we're having a hard time keeping a cluster of kids on pace with a group of kids that are driving fast?
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah,
It's actually the
if you
opposite.
think about an individual kid and you say, hey, that kid is actually way ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Got it.
And we have an expected growth for that kid, but that kid is like, a grade level ahead, right? And they just don't achieve what the growth is.
Sure.
Right? They'll be in that low growth
Sure.
percentage, but they're still a grade level ahead,
Got
right?
it.
So there's a
Got it.
proportion, right?
Like the higher achieving, the more complex growth becomes.
Got it.
And I'm guessing you see more variability in those younger grades, because you've got
Yes.
kids coming out of the gate real fast.
Yeah.
And you can't, there shouldn't be an expectation that you have ridiculous RIT growth year over year over year. At some point, doesn't it start to stabilize?
That's one of the changes in the algorithm, but you do see, in particular, like there are grades where you see expected growth being 10 to 12 RIT points, and then by the time they move into middle school, it might be reduced to now 6.
Yeah.
And for many of our kids, as I showed on one of the previous slides, who are already performing like at or above high school benchmarks, the targets become more complex.
Yeah.
Sure. Which makes fourth grade even stand out even more because almost the entire grade is performing at their own performance level from before or higher.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about that. So you referenced how in fourth grade particular, you have heavy on the teachers who piloted the math curriculum, and then you have the math specialists that happen to be co-teaching. What's fascinating, and I don't want to extrapolate this one data point into something bigger, but you would think there would be an implementation dip. And the fact that there wasn't, and the fact that in the one particular grade that had the most of that curriculum, do you think we should expect next year to see this be even better across? Did you see my question?
Let's hope.
But do you see my question?
Let's hope. I mean, we hope. It definitely is a curriculum that is requiring like people to become comfortable with it, and that's adults and students alike, because it is a very, very different approach. But like our math curriculum specialist, who I check in with all the time.
Yeah.
And the reason she's gone in and done some co-teaching alongside teachers, she is fascinated by the depth of understanding kids are gaining conceptually about mathematics, the way they're talking the vocabulary that they're using, the understanding. She just tells me every day that she's in the classroom that she feels really, really good about this decision.
I know we don't have the data in front of us, this gets down to the granular level of students and things like that. But for our students that would be considered having more challenging learning needs, right, being more potentially individualized or intensive learning, does this curriculum also demonstrate through data that it's working for them too?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, I mean, we looked very closely at the demographic breakdowns, the cohort data that is like IEP students, free and reduced lunch students, ethnicity and race. Like we are showing green across the board with the exception of one particular cohort that we're also monitoring, and that is our students with low socioeconomic status in math. So that is a particular cohort that we have to pay attention to, but our students otherwise are all showing green or blue growth as well. One of the things with this math curriculum that we're constantly working through, and Joette, we just did a professional development last week with teachers around math and supporting students with IEPs in particular, but also a ton of, a different level of emotional need has come up because that productive struggle is hard for so many of our students. We're talking very specifically about how to scaffold that experience for some of our learners because it does create some anxiety when they're initially going through that phase. Like, you don't have to know the answer. You're actually not supposed to know the answer. And that's been struggling.
Yeah,
that's been a
it's a
struggle
lot.
for some.
And just one last question on this, and just on the topic of equity, how does this data parse out when you look at just the 4 elementaries separately and the 2 middle schools separately side by side?
Yeah, almost consistent. We've not reported publicly like all of the school data just because of the identifying factor. We also don't want to, create competitive natures. Like, we're in a very data supportive environment right now, which is good. But if you put them side by side, one, we're seeing all green growth across all 6 schools as well in both reading and math. That's why I said to others before we were coming in here, I'm like, this is boring data report, like all's good. But we are seeing like pretty comparable RIT bands and everything across the 4 schools as well.
Yeah, I think the only comment that I'd make is that I know sometimes people, community members will look at this data and look at the benchmark and I think misconstrue that as proficiency, right? Which it is not, right? And so 58% is not saying that 42% of our kids can't, are not there. I just want to make that clarification if anybody's watching this or does the research. So we do get those emails from time to time.
Yeah.
So.
Can I comment on math before we move on? I have a 4th grader, and I don't remember homework for my current 9th grader. So when I think back to when Redden was in 4th grade, I don't remember this much homework. So that's one comment I want to make. And, it's really interesting to try to get, a 4th grader to come home and like do homework still, because I have a young 4th grader, right? So I have a 4th grader that could possibly be in 3rd grade, but he does it, he'll do it. And I think what's really encouraging is the constant communication from the teachers, letting us know where they're at so that we can continue along that path. So I just want to commend the teachers for doing that. And really the kids are also doing it as well, but the teachers, that constant communication has really been helpful to me as a parent to understand. And then I have a question about the rollout of the new curriculum. Obviously, it's great to see this, 4th grade cohort do so well. Is there anything that you've done differently with this rollout versus previous rollouts that, could be something that, we can maybe hone in on, or just, is it just like the teachers, or is there anything that's slightly different with this that you can think of? And
I will tell you, like, the professional learning plan that we've implemented to go along with this, we used the vendor professional learning to kick off the year. So we brought them in just to help our teachers unpack the curriculum, like learn where the resources are within it, do all of those things. And then we told them we did not we did not need their professional learning anymore, that we have taken on the professional learning aspect of it within the district. So our instructional coaches work with Sarah and I, like we unpack every unit of instruction together, and then they turnkey that with their grade level teams in the schools. We also had 2 days of professional learning with each of the grade levels, where we focused on both reading and math. We held those in the fall, so I believe one in October and then another in December. So we've taken on a little bit more with this implementation, but really kind of trying to approach the curriculum as though we were classroom teachers. How would we need to unpack it so that we could help do that for our teachers? Because it is a lift if you're learning all of it and you don't have some of it scaffolded for you as well. So we did a similar implementation plan with social studies a couple of years ago, and it was also very effective. All right. I've talked through most of the math summary, so I'll move us to reading, and same thing here. So if you're looking across at the winter mean and you're comparing to previous means, you're going to see that all of our students across grade level are in the same RIT band as compared to previous cohorts. What we know about our students in reading is that they come in above the national norm. They kind of plateau in some of the intermediate grades in terms of like they stay well above the national norm. They're just not stretching it. And then what we're seeing is that they outgrow their national cohorts before they exit us in 8th grade, which is a comparable trend to what we're seeing in math, which is a good thing. And some of that has increased in the last couple of years, actually, with some of the shifts that we've been doing in ELA.
That's an interesting comment, though, in terms of stretching against the norm,
Mhm.
right? I mean, if there was a grade level that you were to say, because it's going to be cohort-based, right? And then so new curriculum goes in, new instruction methods or whatever strategies we put in place, right? Just like we saw in math, right? Our hope is that it impacts and stretch. Should that be our expectation, that we should see a stretch against previous performance?
Well, we want to
Or is it
do,
different ways to
we want it, obviously, if our students are entering into our system above the norm, we would want to ideally at least maintain that at a minimum.
Right.
But what I'm saying, and that I think we are proud of and that we want to do, is that we're actually growing the gap.
Mhm.
So we are taking our kids in above the norm and actually spreading the gap wider before they exit District 109.
So through the years, we should see that gap grow.
Yes.
Is there a specific, I mean, because I know we've talked about it in certain subjects, like there's a year that's like tends to be kind of that critical pivot year of, is there a year in math and English and ELA?
It's interesting because when we start to see like a little bit of a dip, which is where we're wanting to try to maintain momentum, is those intermediate grades.
Okay.
So we've seen historically like this far above the norm, and then around like the intermediate grades, like a little bit of a drop off, and then a return, like a peak, a spike again. And what we'd like to see is at a minimum, it stay here and then peak.
I'm just trying to figure out if there's a place where we should be, if you guys had a thought, if there's a place where we should like double down on, does that make sense? Or focus in on, like say it's 3rd grade, right? Like does it, if they start off earlier with a larger stretch, does that then maintain in that pattern? Or is it?
I think we are paying a lot of attention to our intermediate grades.
Yeah.
In particular, in literacy, we've been paying a lot of attention right now to our early literacy, K-1-2, with the structured literacy, the deep teaching of foundational skills. And that, I do think, is the most important in reading. Like, we know if a student isn't reading fluently by the time they're in 3rd grade, that there's going to potentially be requests for evaluations and things like that. So early literacy is critical, but then we have to maintain and actually transition kids in their learning in the intermediate grades.
The reason why I ask is that this is, just like you said, this is boring data because everything's green, right? But this is actually now becoming a pattern. It's becoming a good, which is a good thing, right? But at the I wouldn't say but. And with that, we as a board are saying, okay, hey, we're comfortable where directionally this is going, we want to allocate more of our attention on SEL, on the things that are harder to measure, right? That we know will impact this, right? As well, but there's also potentially things within this. Maybe there's a different metric or a different thing, just like you were talking about. Is there a specific time point of early grade? By this time, we want to see this, right? And how do we improve that, right? That we can add to this that actually has a meaningful view strategically for us to be paying attention to. It's not something that I'm saying, like, right now you need to answer. I'm just saying.
You know, what I've
Yeah.
noticed on the early literacy, for as long as I've been on the board, is that when I look at these scores for the K through 3, we are always 15 to 20 points above the norm.
Right.
Always, which tells me that our parents are doing a really good job, and our preschools are doing a really good job. I
Mike.
don't know if I have a mic
You-
today. Like that always strikes me as so powerful because the spreads are the biggest in early elementary, and our kids don't get here until kindergarten.
Right.
So our parents, like, kudos to our parents, kudos to our preschools, kudos to our community for really, our libraries, all sharing the importance of reading. Because they start coming in really strong, and it's really, really cool to see.
But it's the KPI discussion, right? Of saying, hey, what's the leading indicator, right? I mean, we're looking at output metrics right here, right? Which are great. And I think the leading indicators or the leading proactive steps that you guys are taking, we've talked about curriculum, right? Teaching strategies, those types of things. But is there a KPI in here? And I'm hearing there may be, right? Of saying, hey, we want to focus in, there's two areas. Look, we already know that there's a fourth to fifth grade dip, right? And there's a lot of focus and attention there. I know there's cohort specific attention. That's more for you guys to really handle, right? We work on the average at the board level, right? So, but is there that one thing of early, reading comprehension capability at this grade, right? And then if that's meaningful, then how do we measure that? What are we doing to it? If we improve that, do we see the output of that in the next few years in this output data, right?
I think there are a couple of things. The most important metric in probably all of K-12 education is reading at grade level by the end of third grade, right? So you shift from learning to read to reading to learn. That one is something that we watch like absolutely crazy. Daniel mentioned earlier that if you're not at that point, then you get more and more services, right? And then your performance, then the gap between you and your peers grows annually. I think the part of what you're alluding to is, and this is something we've talked about many times, is that engagement, right? Student engagement. We heard project-based learning, and then and it's harder to measure some of these things, but I think the measures that we should have, the key measures, is something we pay a ton of attention to already, which is that literacy number, and then also growth overall. One of the other things that I would be looking for if I were on a board would be to see whether or not annually there is a gain on national percentiles relative to your peers across the nation, right? And that's what you'll see. You'll see one level in third grade, for example, and then by the time our kids are in eighth grade, their national percentile is growing substantially.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I'm thinking back on it, and I'm just going to read this back to you for a second here so I can, what I'm hearing is that based off of where we are, your guys' strategic focus at the administrative level, from an execution standpoint, is where we need to be, that our attention as a board really should be on the harder things to do. That'll have a bigger impact than doing.
I mean, that's where the board has been pointing us. I think
Yeah.
that's the significant pivot that we're in the process of figuring, or creating a recommendation relative to that, and that's the next generation of KPIs, if you will.
Because it's like you're the victim of your own success to a certain extent when you see a blue
Oh, no,
number
I'm
like
not a
you do.
victim. I have a lot of ideas. So it's another meeting.
But you have that, that fourth grade number that pops out in the math, right? And there was a specific action that was taken. There was an approach that was done associated with it. There was a number that popped out that was extraordinary in nature, right? And then the question is, what's going to happen with that fourth grade cohort going forward, right? Does that now show a wider gap that they start to build? And is there a lesson to be learned there that there's always more to do, right? But you found success, right? Within it. And I agree that our attention needs to be on these other things, but I don't want to get to the point where we're ignoring the academics while we're all focused here.
I don't think you'll ever be there.
No, I know.
Yeah.
No, I actually think I go back to, I think Kelly had, asked a question about the productive struggle, the approach to learning, how kids are dealing with that, how adults are doing that with that. And do we anticipate next year that it looked the same? And I'm like, I sure hope. And I actually do believe that because we're in an inaugural year, we're asking kids to do problem-based learning, and we're already seeing trends that look like this. Now imagine what that looks like when kids have been doing that for multiple years. Imagine the levels of critical thinking and analysis that you can take kids to if you get them comfortable in spaces where they don't know all the answers and they're doing things like Charlie was able to showcase today. I think we have a lot of opportunity ahead.
The learning to me, and when we start talking about the EL or the SEL, aspect of what we're talking about, the productive struggle, the grit, those types of things. It's a virtuous cycle, right? If you build the curriculum has to be aligned to that philosophy and approach. We want them to struggle. We want them to find that productive struggle. Well, our curriculum needs to not only support that, but provide those challenges for them in order to do that.
Yep.
And I think that's what we saw in that new curriculum, why I'm so excited and why I'm digging in on this so much, right, is when we talk about SEL and those other things, we oftentimes don't link the two, even though we say philosophically they're linked, right? This is a very tactical example of where it's linked, right?
We chose a curriculum really based on our
Yeah.
mission and vision. To keep us moving, same reading cohort data. So again, if you're looking across, you're seeing the same cohort. If you're looking down, you're comparing cohorts. To Kate's point, like we see our students coming in well above the national average. It has been interesting to look at reading in recent years, though, as we've moved to this foundational skill focus. We are very lucky to have kids coming to our spaces from language-rich environments. We are seeing that foundational skills piece and the rich development of that in the early grades doesn't always show up in MAP in those early grades. Like we're starting to see the spread change, like we're seeing a change in those entry-level skills slightly, but seeing it growing more over time too, which is interesting and shows up a little bit in this data. But again, that same trend that I described earlier about growing through the grades. And then this piece, again, third grade compared to spring of fourth grade, sixth grade compared to spring of eighth grade, and our eighth graders off the charts in the reading national comparison. And this really boring chart for ACRA growth where we're showing all green across all cohorts and actually pretty consistent benchmarking here too, which is interesting. If you look at our benchmark across grades, you're not seeing that same dip even in that the sixth grade cohort in reading. So it is something about math, which is why we do need to pay attention to it.
I'm going to beat Ryan before he turns his mic on. Are we in year two?
Year two of ELA. Yes.
And year two of ELA for K-8?
Yes, K-8.
Okay. And, okay. And math is year one of K-8 or year one of K-ish?
K-5, what we've done in 6-8, we're still using the same core curriculum, but we've invested, and we're actually going to be hosting next week. Our middle school math teachers have been doing a lot of professional development with building thinking classrooms, which is the same instructional approach as what you see in Amplify Desmos. So using same curricular materials, but instructional shift.
Understood. So the ELA second year, I know the biggest shift we made last year, when last year was the first year, is it more on the phonemic awareness, phonics, fundamentals of reading?
Yes.
Should we be expecting, or should we see even more massive growth, or do you think this is reflective of the success of that curriculum?
I think some of this is reflective of that success. I also think it goes back to what I was saying in that previous slide, that we're seeing a little bit of a difference in the K2 data than we've seen before. Like it actually, we're seeing the growth resulting from that early literacy foundational skills popping now in like third, fourth grade.
That goes to Ryan's question
Yes.
then, which is because these incoming third graders next year will have had first grade and second grade of this
Yep.
new curriculum. It'll be very interesting to track them and maybe compare them for a few
Right.
years ago against third graders to see what that delta is.
Yeah. And I say that, talking about two of our heaviest curriculums shifting in the last 2 years, I just really have to commend our educators because that is a really heavy lift and it's one that they elected to take on. We had some conversation about pausing math and the decision, as you remember maybe in the spring, was like, we don't have the opportunity to pause, like we see the need for a change. And that's a lot of work on their part.
Yeah, I mean, this is a marked difference. I mean, I remember the complaints from teachers community about change management, right? There was always the change management argument. This is not that, right? This is, you can see buy-in, right? Which I think is the effectiveness. You mentioned in math that the low socioeconomic cohort in math was an issue. Is it the same in ELA or?
It is not. We're
It is
seeing
not.
green in everything in ELA.
Okay.
Without going into the weeds at all operationally with math and that particular cohort, are there strategies that have been mulled and potentially might be going into effect to help some of the learners that are having more of that discrepant growth?
Yeah, what we have to do is we have to find out, like, we have to do an analytic, really essentially trying to figure out where the gap exists. Sometimes with that student body, too, is where we've seen mobility in and out of the system. And so they're coming from different background experiences from kids who have grown up in this particular system. And so we have to identify where the gap exists and try to fill it.
I do have, I'm going to have an AI question. So is ECRA like considering, I mean, I'm just thinking like this is a perfect example of an opportunity for teacher enablement of, hey, I have a student, their growth score based off of their testing. The test results should have some information based off the types of questions and subjects. This is a perfect application for AI to give a teacher saying, hey, this student, had this growth and based off of the performance of their test in historical, this is what you should be focusing on versus I'm guessing today somebody is doing that analysis manually to figure out. Am I wrong on that or?
To figure out where
Like
to
the-
go.
Yeah, the points of improvement for that specific student. Like I'm thinking about IEP for every kid, right?
Yes, yeah, and there are tools now that we have embedded, like within our systems, that they can use to sort of assist, to give them brainstorm ideas, like this, yes, maybe this should be a target focus, and then we can do an additional diagnostic. That was actually some of the work that occurred in the afternoon of the Institute Day.
When will we know more about what the middle school math curriculum would look like?
Yeah,
Considering the elementary.
I can see, I'll chat with Kathy, but it would be really interesting for you all at some point. Maybe we can put you through a Building Thinking Classrooms task so that you can experience it. We could do one pretty brief in a board meeting so that you can see what it looks like. Bring your math hat.
Have the kids facilitate it, have them teach. All right, any other questions?
Danielle?
All right, next on the agenda, freedom of information requests. John?
There's 2 in your packet. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Any questions on FOIAs? All right. Next, policy first reading, 6:20, 6:60, 6:130, 6:135, 6:140, 6:160, 6:210, 6:235, 6:240, 6:270, 6:280, 7:10, 7:70, 7:130, 7:140, 7:150, 7:180, 7:190, 7:250, 7:290, 7:310, 7:340, 8:30, and 8:100. It looks like your new process is working.
It is.
I'm just going to compliment the policy committee and Dale, because as a non-policy committee member, it's a lot of work that you guys do, and it's a lot of thought and a lot of detail, and it's impressive.
I was once told policy is the backboard of an organization. Yeah. So clear up confusion up front. Yes, you see two policy packets here. This is because the recommendations from press was rather robust in their last installment. So Mitch and I discussed splitting it into two. We did the first session, which we're going to discuss later when we get to action. This is the second, so we met. It's now come up for information now. You're seeing a number of policies there. It's all rooted in, again, press making recommendations with legal feedback on all the improvements to policies that we then sit down and figure out what's the impact on Deerfield 109. So if you have any questions, I'm willing to entertain them.
Any questions?
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Dale. All right, next on the agenda, action items. Consent agenda, 9.1.1, approval of meeting minutes, regular and closed session minutes from January 22nd, 2026. 9.1.2, personnel. 9.1.2.1, resignations, retirements. 9.1.2.2, leaves of absence. 9.1.2.3, employment of certified staff. 9.1.2.4, employment of educational support staff. 9.1.2.5, employment of at-will staff. 9.1.3, bills for payment. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Dornfeld?
Aye.
Ms. Giacomo?
Aye.
Ms. Joyce?
Aye.
Mr. Mirev? Mr. Abraham?
Aye.
Ms. Bonner?
Aye.
And President Quell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
9.3, policy final reading. 2:120, 2:150. Oh, did I? Sorry. I crossed it off. Sorry. Treasurer's report. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Giacomo?
Aye.
Ms. Joyce?
Aye.
Mr. Mirev?
Aye.
Mr. Abraham?
Aye.
Ms. Bonner?
Aye.
Dr. Dornfeld?
Aye.
And President Quell.
Aye.
Motion
See,
carries.
that's a lesson learned. Don't cross it off until you actually do it, yeah. All right, so policy final reading, 2:120, 2:150, 2:270, 3:10, 3:50, 3:60, 4:10, 4:30, 4:80, 4:110, 4:140, 4:150, 4:160, 4:170, 4:190, 5:10, 5:20, 5:90, 5:100, 5:120, 5:185, 5:190, 5:200, 5:220, 5:280, and 5:300. And I don't think doctors say colon as often as I just said colon. May I have a motion to approve?
Press was busy.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Joyce?
Aye.
Mr. Mirev?
Aye.
Mr. Abraham?
Aye.
Ms. Bonner?
Aye.
Dr. Dornfeld?
Aye.
Ms. Giacomo?
Aye.
And President Quell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
9.4, approval of the 2026-27 regular board meeting schedule. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Mirev?
Aye.
Mr. Abraham?
Aye.
Ms. Bonner?
Aye.
Dr. Dornfeld?
Aye.
Ms. Giacomo?
Aye.
Ms. Joyce?
Aye.
And President Quell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next on the agenda, committee reports.
I, once again, don't have a True North update. Governing board did not meet in January or February. We'll have a meeting in March. Mr. Simic, I believe you had a February executive committee meeting?
We did. It was uneventful except for the closed session, which I can't discuss here.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for that.
I think EDC met, but I can't remember.
Finance met. We met on Tuesday. We discussed, we had actually had PTMA present and just discuss our investment strategies. Obviously reviewing everything with our policies. So thank you, Dale and Policy Committee, for having those guidelines set up for us. So it was really interesting to just really look at, obviously we get the treasurer's report every month and just kind of understanding a little bit more about the district's history of investment, which has been very conservative, and really just looking at what our options are out there for us. So I think more to come on that. And then we also discussed we had the 3-point belts on the discussion. Student safety, again, just always a top priority, but really looking at that, how it analyzed with compliance and financial impacts to the district. So that's kind of all we touched on. So
We had an EDC committee meeting. It was discussed in closed session today, so we can't really discuss. Any other committee reports? All right. I think we had enough of policy committee today.
Yeah.
All right, next on the agenda, open community participation. Is there anybody that would like to say anything? All right. Thank you guys for coming. All right, next on the agenda, board superintendent other. Anybody have anything?
Thanks for everybody attending all the various sessions. So they're going well, and we've got 5 more. 5 more.
Finish line, Kathy.
I just want to say that the data presentation that we get every few months or 3 times a year is always my favorite thing. I always get energized by it.
We could tell.
Yeah, I
Get all
know.
jazzed up.
Well, I think part of it is that seeing the evolution of where we've been to where we are today, in terms of, it feels like a process, it feels like momentum, it feels like the strategic plan in the execution, you can see the results of it. That's always a very satisfying thing as a board to be able to see, and especially over the length of time, seeing that progress. It's just, I don't know, I can't say enough about it. It's an amazing thing. So
Keep bringing us boring data.
and it's
the best.
everybody, right? It goes to staffing, it goes to the finances to be able to do it. It goes to it's all of it coming together in one place. So thank everybody for that momentum. That's an amazing thing. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, John.